Welcome to this edition of Sustainability Karma. I'm your host Rajiv Tikku. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Apoorvshree Chaturvedi. He's Director of Global Operations and New Projects at UFlex Group. Welcome, Mr. Chaturvedi, to this edition.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you.
UFlex has ventured into sustainable package much ahead of the time. What was the motivation?
I think one of the motivation was that, in the mid-90s, our chairman, along with the board of the company, then next up got UFlex was a much smaller company there. Well, we're always traveling for machinery, because India was basically in the mid-90s and early 2000s fully dependent upon imported machinery for the packaging manufacturing. And during the travels, he saw that a lot of machine suppliers have machineries being put up for the handling of plastic waste. And coming from India, I think our chairman and the board, they had the foresight to basically understand that it will become a problem in India in the future because you have, basically city municipal budgets that are not equipped to basically handle the level of urbanization. And now if you look at post 2005, let's say, if you take that as a benchmark here, India's story is basically about more and more urbanization, whether it's a tier 1 city, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 city. The whole value-led model is that today you have 65 or 70% of the population employed in agriculture. And for India to become a middle-income country, that number will need to come down to about 40-45%. And that means more people move to cities, more consumption will happen, more waste will be generated. So this general theme has been pretty prevalent at the senior level, at least at our chairman and the board's level for a long time. But as obviously now we've grown in scale, now we have the funds and the brand and the operational expertise available to put up these large recycling capacities. In the past also we had it, but those capacities were smaller. And they were more focused on basically handling the waste that we were generating inside of our industrial operations. They were not focused or equipped to handle waste that is being generated in the public domain. There is an appetite in the market now for companies to put up organized recycling facilities for the materials that they are producing and then recycle them appropriately so that they don't damage the...
You work across markets, so how difficult or how easy is it to scale up innovations in different territories?
I think it's pretty easy if it's an immodest answer, but it's pretty easy if the customers are willing to buy, because the customers have to be willing to buy on their own initiatives. So it's all a question about scaling innovation is purely dependent upon whether the buyers are willing to market. If the buyers are willing to market, the suppliers like us will supply, and we'll make the necessary capital investments to basically provide those materials. In India now you have the EPR initiative, so the companies will have to have 10% of their packaging in recycled content. And that means that they will have to buy recycled packaging or packaging with recycled inputs already to meet the government regulation. And if they don't, there'll be financial penalty or obligation on them. By and large, we've seen that if the buyers are willing to buy because they have an ability to market what they're buying, innovation scales up pretty quickly. And they say if the buyers are not able to market, then everything remains on paper.
Does it take a lot of effort to convince buyers to switch over to sustainable packaging?
Yes, it does, because the price usually of recycled inputs versus virgin is higher. And then they have a lot of questions regarding performance of the materials, regarding the functionality of the materials. You have to convince them on that. Then they have extended testing protocols because they don't want to make any large changes in their supply chain and have any adverse impact. So I would say the whole process at a minimum, in India maybe the things speed up more quickly, but I would say in Western markets it takes at least an average of 6 to 9 months. Average of 6, minimum of 6 you can say, average of at least 6 to 9.
Finally, it boils down to consumers, and particularly in India now we have this demographic dividend of a younger generation. How have you seen the awareness and the response changing over the years?
Indian consumers are extremely sensitized. They want clean standards. I think in terms of urban standards, I think an Indian diaspora no longer wants dirty cities or cities with poorly functioning waste management protocols. They can put up with other challenges like road congestion and perhaps non-ideal urbanization. But in terms of living standards, you're asking young people to set up families and buy houses. So nobody wants to buy a house, which is a expensive asset to own and maintain and basically, commit to. And then we end up living in a city where you have extremely poor public hygiene or extremely poor waste standards. So I think there's almost zero tolerance in terms of the communities that will come, and the younger generation will not put up with the idea of dirty cities. And if you go back 15 years ago, the problem would not get fixed because you didn't have enough technology. Now you have enough technology to basically at least improve and work on the problem. India is taking, let's say, a certain approach in recycling. If you look at China, I think China is setting up, in the last 5 years, almost every year they've set up more than 100 to 200 waste recycling plants. They bought a company in Germany which has a technology to incinerate waste, not using fires, but using plasma, which is much more expensive. But plasma, the energy in plasma is so strong that it can handle all kinds of waste, dry waste, wet waste. It doesn't really matter. So, all countries now have technology available to them.
What are the next frontiers to scale in sustainable packaging in terms of innovation?
But I think one of the first frontiers is to basically, recolonize a heat that's already been running, which is that to show to the industry that existing set of materials can be recycled. The idea that you have to change packaging design from the ground up and invent a whole new quantity of materials is misplaced. There are enough materials today that perform well in a cost-effective manner for packaging, which can be recycled and can be successfully put back into the value chain, either back into the food value chain or into organized articles of plastic where they don't cause pollution and environmental damage, like injection molded furniture or injection molded parts which have recycled content in them. That's the first, I think, most important thing could be that. Secondly, would be obviously to not over-design packaging. So definitely packaging designing standards can change where in the past what was being over-designed can be reduced. So if you're using 3 layers, if you have a better material today in which you get the functionality of the earlier 2 layers, you can reduce a 3-layer packaging design to 2-layer. And now you have less plastic and you still have the same functionality. Thirdly, I think plastic barrier quantities are improving a lot. So in a lot of applications, you more need aluminum foil. And aluminum foil provides a very good barrier for food packaging. But because the barrier standards of plastic materials are improving, in a lot of cases, you won't need aluminum foil for packaging, which makes it instantly more recyclable because the moment you combine foil with another plastic or paper, it's very hard to recycle it because the melting point of foil is super high and the melting point of plastic is much lower. So, it's quite difficult to salvage a combined packaging material which has aluminum foil inside it. So I think a lot of initiatives are there, and the main idea is that for the industry to show that it can grow the production of plastics hand in hand with recycling. If you just grow up plastics production without recycling facilities, it's obviously going to cause a problem down the line.
When you look at your whole value chain, what are the biggest challenges you face in embedding sustainability right across? And what is it that really gives you hope that we'll have better chance?
In terms of the value chain, I would say on the main inputs, the main resins, the problem is not so severe there because you can have recycled resins for most of the main materials that we're producing. And in terms of the plant itself, there's no challenge with sustainability because the waste that's generated inside the plant is recycled within the plant. The machines that we have, the new machines that we have, they're very energy efficient. They use, you can say, half the energy to produce a unit of plastic than what was being done 50 years ago. So that's a huge improvement. You have 50% less energy to produce the same material than you were using 15 years ago. I would say the main challenge would be when you give the materials to the customers to get it. A lot of the transport materials with which that you're selling, like the pallets, the ancillary packaging material, if you can get them back, those can be reused over and over again. So then you divide the cost of the pallet by 15-20 rather than dividing it by 1. And then that's the actual sustainability exposure for that input. So I would say it's more about incentivizing the customers and the suppliers to exchange materials as much as possible, so that each company which has the ability to recycle those materials can recycle or reuse them. But in terms of the actual inputs and the operational production of the materials, the industry is making a lot of progress here and will continue to make progress.
Is the environmental, social and governance factors are seen as a tick box compliance measure in India at least? What's your take on it?
Oh, I think I don't know, I can't speak for other industries, but for packaging, ESG is definitely not a tick box, because the public understanding of plastics has reached a point where if you don't show a positive ESG footprint, where you're active in recycling your materials or you're active in reducing the amount of energy you're using to produce the materials, then customers will eventually, over time lose interest in buying the output of these companies, and you will be out of the market. So I think I can speak only for the packaging industry, but for the packaging industry, ESG is not a tick box. I would say it's, basically part of the operational posture now of the companies.
You have this unique perspective of coming from your base in UK. So how would you compare the Indian packaging industry on sustainability factors vis-a-vis the global industry?
I would say Indian industry is much more faster than global industry in trying initiatives or product ideas that are considered more sustainable. In UK and Europe, it's been extremely slow. So the talk is much bigger than the actual movement on the ground of changing materials, or improving the packaging standards. The UK, for example, for some reason has gone towards paper and plastic combinations because they think that's more sustainable, but paper and plastic is inherently not recyclable. So either you have a full plastic laminate or you have a paper laminate in which you have no plastic. If you combine the two, suddenly you will have a situation where you can't really recycle that. So I don't really understand why they've gone with that. So I would say Indian industry is much more faster in terms of trying new things. The only challenge is that the public utilities, the recycling facilities at a state level or at a city level, are not really there today in terms of handling the waste. And the government should put out more aggressive tenders to basically set up that capacity. Even at their own cost, they should do it, meaning that they should set it up themselves to demonstrate in key cities that it can be done. And they should move quickly on that, because the idea of changing packaging materials and designs without having collection points and recycling facilities is a hard stretch.
And finally, in case you would like to comment on the global plastic treaty, which has not really taken off.
Yeah, so the US was the key. The US was the key party that basically said that we won't support an artificial limit on the output of plastics, because they're blessed with a lot of feedstocks and energy to basically keep producing petrochemical products far into the future. And I think you can't. In one way, they're right, because you cannot artificially bottle the production of a material based upon a global environmental standard. So historically, plastic consumption keeps going up, but a country is in the lower middle income and middle income status. Only when it reaches high middle or high income status does the plastic consumption basically plateau. Until then, you keep having household formation, and then for household formation, you keep eating pharmaceuticals, food, packed products to basically support the urbanization. So for India also, it's not beneficial right now to sign up to a global plastics treaty, which puts a limit on the global output of plastics. And I think anything has to happen with a global consensus, which doesn't seem very likely, at least in the next 3-4 years. So I think we don't have an opinion as a company whether it's good and bad, but all we're saying is that you can't put a limit on the growth of plastics materials, especially when those materials are improving in their sustainable footprint. The idea of putting a freeze today in the future will basically mean that legacy packaging materials and legacy technologies will get market share for free, and newer materials and newer technologies that are more ESG sensitive will basically have less of an ability to take market share, which is illogical.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Chaturvedi, for sparing your time. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.
We hope you like this program. We look forward to your feedback on our WhatsApp number 98181205554. For participation in this program, write to us at sustainability.karma@gmail.com. Looking forward to meet you again at the same time next week with a new episode and a new guest. Till then, goodbye from all of us. Sustainability Karma, a podcast series on sustainable development, sustainability, and ESG.